Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source of Black news, views, and Black opinions. Today is Thursday, April 21st, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, the U.S. Supreme Court may be able to protect cops from lawsuits, even if they don't read suspects their Miranda rights, and the tough decision that justices now have to make in the case. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's political campaign must pay former White House aide Omarosa, Manigault Newman, millions of dollars. And we break down what was in Trump's unsuccessful lawsuit. Then, a Connecticut state trooper is being charged with manslaughter after fatally shooting a black teen. But why did the trooper shoot their weapon? We have the story.
Plus, rapper A$AP Rocky is out on bond today after being arrested yesterday at LAX airport. And reality TV star Nene Leakes is suing Bravo and NBC Universal, and we're going to tell you why, because we have all of that and so much more. It is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
The midterm elections are later this year, and Democrats are desperately in need of a big turnout by African American voters. They need us to help them control the House and the Senate. But once again, we have to bail out a party that some think take us for granted. Alicia Garza is one of those people who won't let issues important to Black people be ignored. She's a founding member of Black Lives Matter, and now she's the leader of the Black Futures Lab, a group working to transform African American communities around the nation. And Alicia joins me today to talk about her latest efforts to get Black people access to power. Alicia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know, what is the Black Futures Lab and why is it key to changing the conditions of that Black people face in America?
Yeah, I started the Black Futures Lab about 4 years ago, and we started with the Black Census Project. The Black Futures Lab works to make Black communities powerful in politics so we can be powerful in the rest of our lives. And the reason that we started with the Black Census Project is because what we know about politics and Black folks is that we're often spoken about, but we're rarely spoken to. And that means disaster when it comes to public policy. If Black opinions, experiences, and needs aren't being factored into the rules that shape our lives every single day, then it means that our communities are being left behind, and it means that our communities are losing valuable resources that need to be invested in us. So the Black Census Project aims to change that. We are the largest survey of Black people in America in 157 years. And this year, we're aiming to break our own record and be the largest survey of Black people in America in history.
Oh, wow. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the Black Futures Lab. It's in the middle of its Black Census Project. I believe you did the first one in 2018. So what is this project doing right now? What are some of the answers from the surveys that people are taking?
So what the Black Census Project is doing right now is trying to reach 200,000 Black people across the nation to learn more about what we experience every day in the economy, in our society, and in our democracy. And then we're also asking our communities what we want to see done about it. When we did this in 2018, we learned that the most important issue to Black communities, the thing that was keeping us awake at night, was low wages that were too low to support a family, quickly followed by lack of access to affordable housing and lack of access to affordable healthcare. What we did with that data is we turned it into a Black agenda for 2020, and we used that information to organize, mobilize, and activate Black voters across the nation to stand for people who are going to move our agenda forward. You'll actually see a number of things from our agenda that became top priorities for the Biden-Harris administration, particularly as it related to COVID-19 relief and recovery. Well, we're back again 4 years later because our needs still have not been met. And we want to understand even better how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting Black communities. We already know that our communities are being hit worse than other communities, and that has a lot to do with crumbling infrastructure that is both social and public health infrastructure in our communities. So we aim to change that. If you want to take the Black Census, you can do it right now at blackcensus.org. It takes a little more than 10 minutes. The other thing that we're doing is we're mobilizing across the country, working together hand in hand with Black-led grassroots organizations all over the nation to take the survey everywhere our communities are. We're taking the survey into prisons and jails. We've translated the survey into other languages that Black people speak so that none of us get left behind. We're also making sure that demographics in our community that are typically not included in polls and research are being included, including the LGBT community.
You know, I actually took the survey myself, and you're right, it takes a little under 10 minutes, you know, and I think for me, one of the hardest questions, it was, you know, name 3 things that are facing the Black community right now. And there was a list, there was at least 20 things, and you could only pick 3. And it was really hard to narrow down which 3 to choose from. You said the top one was, again, what was the top one?
In 2018, It was low wages that weren't enough to support a family.
So when you did it this time around, what were the top 3? Because I could not narrow down. I mean, I picked 3, but it was really hard to kind of choose which 3 to choose from.
Well, thank you for taking the census. It's really important that all of us are engaged and activated. And it's meant to be a little bit challenging, right? This is not meant to feed you the answers, right? We really want to know what it is that you think. The survey won't close until July 31st, so you still have time to participate. And please send it to your friends, your families, your neighbors. Have a house party safely with masks, of course, and talk with people about the survey itself. We're really trying to make sure that we reach everybody. And I can tell you, we'll be revealing the results of this survey in August with a Black Agenda 2022. So you'll just have to stay tuned to hear what everybody else is saying across the country.
Okay, I'll have to stay tuned. But it was really, it was really hard. But you know what? I definitely think it will help narrow down, you know, what we need to focus on coming this midterm election. So, you know, here every day on the show, we talk about state violence, mass incarceration, voter suppression. But how do we energize a new generation of leaders and decision makers to care about some of these issues that are facing the Black community?
Well, the thing is that a new generation of leaders has already been activated and already cares deeply about these issues that are impacting us. In fact, this new generation of leaders has literally changed the political landscape in this country. It's changed the policy conversations in this country, and that's important. But this movement is also facing an intense backlash. We hear it in President Biden's speeches, right, about refunding the police. That has everything to do with how strong this movement has been, encouraging us to rethink what public safety looks like. When we hear things about COVID-19 relief and recovery, right? These are all things that this movement is pushing forward. And it's important for us to understand that the backlash against things like critical race theory, the backlash against being able to even talk about being gay in schools in places like Florida is really a response and a reaction to how leaders have been energized across this country to change the things that we can no longer abide by.
You know, we're running out of time, but really quick, another component to the Black Futures Lab is the Black to the Future Public Policy Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We're about to graduate 25 Black grassroots leaders next week from all over the country who've been working with us for 8 months to learn the ins and outs of how to write, win, and implement new policy in cities and states across the nation. We think it's important to build the capacity of our communities to write and win new rules so that we can redistribute the way that resources are being divvied out right now. And so we can change the rules that govern our lives. We do this policy institute because it's important to us to change laws, and changing laws is what we're doing. In California, we partnered with the Young Women's Freedom Center to get a law passed in the state of California that changes sentencing guidelines for people who were in violent or abusive intimate partner relationships and were coerced into nonviolent offenses. These are things that change and impact people's lives every single day. And we're really, really proud of our policy fellows. Those fellows are moving legislation right now through legislative committees across the nation. And watch out, we plan to pass more policies in cities and states across the country this year and in the years to come.
Alicia Garza, founder of Black Futures Lab, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
You have the right to remain silent. It's a common refrain made by police on TV shows as well as in real life. So the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, they could protect cops from lawsuits if they don't provide suspects their Miranda warnings. The High Court heard arguments yesterday in Los Angeles in a case that dates back to 2014. Now, the case, it arose from a confrontation between an L.A. County Sheriff's deputy and a nursing assistant accused of sexually abusing a patient. The assistant, Terrence Takeo, says the deputy did not advise him of his rights when he was questioned, and he signed a confession to the assault. Now, the justices, they must decide if the nursing assistant can sue the deputy. And so I actually learned of Miranda Rights from a movie. I forgot exactly what movie it was from because, like we said, lots of different movies use Miranda Rights. And so for our soulmates that don't know, when we talk about Miranda warnings and Miranda Rights, pretty much you have the right to remain silent. If you do say anything, it can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to have a lawyer present during any questioning, and if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you if you do desire. And so a lot of us now, since we've learned this in movies, we expect, well, if you get pulled over, you get arrested, rather I need to get my Miranda rights. And you can, in most cases, sue if a police officer does not read you your Miranda rights. So in this particular case, two things are trying to be proven. The first, if a cop fails to provide your Miranda rights, was this violating your constitutional right? Then also, this police officer, he's being accused of using racial slurs, lies, and threats to deport this man and send him to wherever country he was from to get a false confession. So can this be used in the court is the question.
You know, growing up in my community, we would have sessions with youngsters. Of course, I was a young man. They were able to talk to me saying, if you get pulled over, even if you know for a fact you've done nothing wrong, it's best to be quiet. Because if you do go back, right, and they start interrogating, you're in that room, sometimes they don't feed you. They won't let you use the restroom. They talk to you a certain way because sometimes they push for a certain confession because they want to get it done then. So it's so important, like, even if you know you're right and you know you didn't do any wrong, just stand up and say, you know what, I want to see a lawyer. I'm not going to say anything. That's what I was taught at a young age.
Yeah, no, you both are right. And I actually think when you, in this particular case, you know, he was called into a side room and he was questioned. And what he said is now being used against him. And so when that happens, if you weren't read your Miranda rights, do I think that you can sue a police officer? Or I think that you, should you sue a police officer? I think the answer is no, because I think that would open a Pandora's box of people suing police officers. But does that mean that your case might get thrown out? Absolutely. If you're not read your rights, if your civil rights are violated because your Miranda rights were not read, should your case be thrown out? Absolutely. So we'll see what happens with this, but I definitely think officers, you need to know. You can't just pull someone in a room and start talking to them and then use their confession against them.
You're right.
That shouldn't happen. Yeah. Okay. And Bernie Sanders says he's willing to run for president in 2024 if President Biden decides not to run again. That's according to a campaign memo shared with the Washington Post. The memo says in the event of an open Democratic primary, the 80-year-old senator would be open to running again. This would be his third time running for president. He gave Hillary Clinton a good run in 2016, but he was crushed by Biden during the primaries in 2020. Earlier this week, though, there were reports Biden told former President Obama that he plans to run for re-election.
Former President Trump's political campaign is being ordered to pay former White House aide and Apprentice star Omarosa Newman $1.3 million. An arbitrator found the Trump campaign owed her the money for legal fees after Trump sued her for writing the tell-all book Unhinged about her time in the White House. Newman's books was the first of a number of books written by former Trump aides that describes a White House in constant chaos. Trump's unsuccessful suit alleged Newman violated a non-disclosure agreement she signed while working for his 2016 campaign.
The Biden administration is appealing a federal court ruling that struck down the mask requirement for passengers on planes, trains, buses, and other public transportation. Now, the decision was made after the CDC said that the mandate was necessary for the public health. The announcement took travelers by surprise.
But what I would note, the objective here is, of course, to appeal the 15-day extension, but also to preserve the CDC authority over the long term, because as we've noted from here, we expect there to be ups and downs in the pandemic, and we certainly want the CDC to continue to have this authority.
The White House says they still encourage Americans to wear masks on public transportation. They point to the increasing infections of the BA.2 Omicron variant spreading in the Northeast as a reason for people to continue to wear your mask.
A day after many people around America celebrated 420, there are federal inmates locked up on marijuana charges wondering when they will be free. People locked up on weed convictions want President Biden to keep his promise to free those convicted of nonviolent marijuana-related crimes. An estimated 2,700 inmates are behind bars on federal drug charges because of marijuana. That's even though 18 states and the District of Columbia allow recreational use of the drug, and 2/3 of Americans support legalization.
And Mitt Romney says President Biden's, quote, woke advisors are the blame for the perfect economic storm of high inflation. The Utah senator blasting Biden for his economic and energy policies. Romney says the president needs to ditch his woke advisors and surround himself with people who want to get the economy going again. Romney says the White House cut back on U.S. oil production and sent out pandemic checks to millions of Americans, which sparked inflation.
And President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden will attend the White House's Correspondents Dinner later this month. It's the first time that a sitting president has attended the event since 2016. Former President Donald Trump, he skipped the dinner during his presidency, and it was canceled in 2020 and 2021 due to the coronavirus pandemic. The dinner will be headlined by comedian Trevor Noah. The event is planned for April 30th.
A $10 million civil lawsuit is being filed by a family of a black man who was killed by a Northern California police officer as the man was having a mental breakdown at a Walmart. This is body cam footage that you see right there of the April 2020 incident. Police were called to the San Leandro Walmart for a man threatening customers with a baseball bat. Officer Jason Flott, he shot 33-year-old Stephen Taylor. Taylor did not go down after being shot. That's when an officer tased him, making him fall to the floor. Fletcher is facing manslaughter charges for killing Taylor. Taylor's family says police used unnecessary force while dealing with a man suffering from a mental health crisis. Soulmates, we will continue to bring you these stories because it's so important that we do that, because over and over again, it's a situation where someone's having a mental issue and police show up and it ends up with someone dying, and it's usually a black person or someone of color, which again is so unfortunate. Yes, we're inside a Walmart. Other people could be at danger, but if you have somewhat control, if you're clearing the area, there's no reason to shoot a man. And then what if those stray bullets hit someone else like it happened in Target store a few months ago?
I think that's the biggest thing that I think of being in a store like this. There are many walls that are set up at Walmart and in Target and department stores that it's very likely that you could shoot another innocent bystander. And, you know, again, we've talked about this before. When a person is having a mental health breakdown or a manic episode, it's scary, and I don't want to take away that fact that it is a very scary sight when you're dealing with that and you have to witness it. But again, just going back to what we've talked to before, there just has to be a way. And I don't know if us talking about it, we say the same thing over and over, that there should be a person that comes out, and I don't know if that is the answer, but something has to be done. I don't know the one touch thing to make it, but just police coming out and doing this, killing this man, unreasonable force in a place like this, that just wasn't the right way. No.
Not only that, Demi, I mean, you're right. We talk about it and we say something needs to be done, but I think if action is taken the first time something like this happens, like there's a complaint made on the officer the first time, it will save someone from losing their life later on. Because this is the third lawsuit filed against this police officer. The first one, he was accused of shooting a dog. The second one, him and his partner, they beat up a man. And this is the third federal lawsuit that has now been filed against him for, you know, excessive force in the line of duty. So I think if we start taking these serious in the first place, it will save somebody their life.
And I want to say this real quick. We don't want officers saying, look, I don't want to use excessive force because I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to try to protect those around me. But again, there has to be another way.
There has to be another way, and you just can't come in hot. They you know, an independent report found that, you know, there were ways to de-escalate the situation before it even got here.
Got it.
So, you know. South Carolina Supreme Court has issued a temporary stay stopping the state from executing a man by firing squad. Richard Moore had chosen to die by firing squad instead of the electric chair. He's been on death row for more than 20 years for killing a convenience store clerk. Moore's attorneys want the U.S. Supreme Court to determine if his crime rises to the level of a death penalty offense.
And Governor Ron DeSantis is making it harder for faculty at state universities in Florida to retain tenure. He signed a bill this week that would require tenured professors to go before their school board of trustees. Now, opponents say what the governor is doing is necessary and unnecessary, So they say state universities already have an annual review process. DeSantis' real goal is to purge professors he believes are pushing their political beliefs on the students.
A Connecticut state trooper is being charged with manslaughter in connection with the fatal shooting of a black teen in 2020. Investigators say Mahbubak Suleiman carjacked a car after stealing a cell phone from a store. The young man led state troopers on a chase in West Haven. Troopers were able to box in the car Suleiman was driving, but Trooper Brian North claims he fired his weapon because he feared for the lives of his partners. But prosecutors say the teen only had a knife and the other troopers were not in danger. There's so many cases when I see something like this happen. This man was 19 years old. Yes, he did something wrong, but I think of my son possibly been in that car. You have people of color that are in fear when they're being chased by the police officer, when they're trying to be pulled over. So yes, he should have stopped, but he did not. But I've seen situations where police surround cars and they will wait for hours for someone to come out of the car, not walk up and assume everyone's in danger by someone that's sitting in the car that only had a knife, come to find out, and yet you take his life again.
For me, I always like to bring it back just on a personal level because we think about situations like this. I was just talking about the 8-year-old boy earlier getting pulled over and the trauma that the black community has when we are faced with police officers and the disparity in black communities versus white communities when we are faced with police. And so we are terrified. I will be the first one to say I am terrified about getting pulled over by police. And so sometimes you do things and you don't in the moment. Yeah. You don't do the right thing, but also there's a way to do the right thing when it comes to police when they're faced with black people.
No, you're right, Jimmy. And, I think it all comes down sometimes to humanity. I think everybody wants to go home at the end of the day, absolutely. Right? So, this officer said that he was holding the knife aggressively, and then he fired 7 shots into the car. And I just think that's a little excessive. 7 is basically really excessive, not a little. And I just think that we really need to have some sort of compassion. I think when you're a police officers, don't get me wrong, your job is it is hard, we know that. Mm-hmm. But I think if you sort of kind of put yourself in the situation or put yourself in the other person's shoes, maybe you can just make a different choice. Put the knife down, say something, talk to him, something.
I agree.
No one wants to be black, though.
No, that part too. No one wants to be black. But that's what I'm saying. We should be policing ourselves. We should have people who look like us in our communities who are policing us. Mm-hmm.